to Season 2 of the Hiring Librarians podcast. We talk about hiring, getting hired, and broader career issues for librarians, archivists, and other folks in information service professions. I'm your host, Emily Week. This podcast is part of my work on the site hiringlibrarians.com, where I've spent more than a decade asking questions, complex, stupid, and everywhere in between, to LIS workers on both sides of the hiring table. This episode was recorded on November 21st, 2024. My guests are Susanne Markgren and Linda Miles. Before we get started, I wanted to mention that I'm running a 4-week online class for job searchers starting August 4th, 2025. If you're interested, you can find the link to register on hiringlibrarians.com/classes. Hello, everybody in podcast land. My guests today are Susanne Markgren and Linda Miles, and they are both academic librarians and longtime collaborators on many presentations, workshops, and publications. They have co-authored the book, How to Thrive as a Library Professional, Achieving Success and Satisfaction, which was published in 2019 by Libraries Unlimited, an imprint of Bloomsbury Publishing. So maybe to get started, Susanne or Linda, or Susanne and Linda, will you each just tell us a little bit about your own career path? What got you into the library world? What exactly you do now? And I can pick somebody to go first.
Sure.
They're both very kind. No, Susanne will go. Okay, great.
Oh, I was just going to say Linda would love to go.
Yes, but you spoke, so you volunteered yourself, I think.
I did. Sure. And I'll try to keep it brief. I feel like I've told this story so many times.
This is always the part that I think I'm like, oh, we'll just do quick introductions, and it ends up being a large chunk. But I think, that's it's interesting. Careers go different ways, so.
They do. And that's a lot of what we write about. So it is important, and our own paths are very important, and it's why we're here today. So sure. Yeah. Going back to undergrad, I was an English and history double major, which I'm sure a lot of librarians can relate to. And librarianship was never on my radar, but this was way back in like the early 90s. So I got my degree, and then after graduating, I was contemplating grad school, not really sure what a master's degree in English would do for me. I was working temp jobs in publishing and editing, and I realized I would like to probably get some kind of degree that would really help me get an actual job. And I started thinking about librarianship mainly because I remembered a course that I took in undergrad where a librarian came to our research class and taught us how to do online research using Gopher, which is a very old technology. This was pre-World Wide Web. And we got to search libraries outside of our state. And it was pretty cool, and look and see what their libraries had on our specific topics. And that was like super cool to me. And I just remember this and I thought, wow, fascinating. Like who knew librarians could be so cool? And then I thought I might enjoy that. So I started looking for jobs, and I thought, well, I better work in a library before I, just decide that that's my whole career path. So I started working part-time at the Minneapolis Public Library. That's where I was living at the time. I was a sub, so they put me in many different libraries, which was fascinating. And I really enjoyed it. And then I also did an unpaid internship at the Guthrie Theater. So I worked in a special library, which was also fascinating and really hard work and no money. I did get a stipend. But that was really interesting. And then I thought, well, I'm going to apply for grad school. And at that point, I was living in Minnesota, and the winters were really brutal. And I thought, where can I go? That is different than Minnesota. And so I got into the University of Texas at Austin. I moved down there. And then I really thought, I'm going to be a special librarian because it just sounded kind of exotic and cool. And I loved working in a theater library. But while I was down there, I did work in a seminary library, and I worked in a government library. And then I got a job at the University of Texas Libraries. And I just kind of fell in love with academic library work. So I moved in different roles and different positions for about 3 years. So I stayed there a little bit after I graduated
Mm-hmm.
and realized academic librarianship was kind of my calling. And then I came to New York, thought, oh, I want to live in New York City. So I applied for jobs in New York City and I got a job. And that was kind of how I ended up in this neck of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
A girl from Wisconsin. I've been in New York for 24 years now. And I worked at Mount Sinai School of Medicine library, and then I moved to SUNY Purchase. So I worked for a large state institution where I was a faculty librarian on the tenure track. And then I moved to my current position, which I've been in for about 8 years now at Manhattan University as director of technical services.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my path. But looking back from that initial, like, why was I interested was like this cool technology part of
Mm-hmm.
libraries and kind of, how advanced that was. I feel like that's been a driving force in my career trajectory. I think in every position I've held, it's like, what can I do that's cool with technology? Like, how can I make things better? How can I learn the systems?
Mm-hmm.
And, hence I've worked in both public services and technical services, but my passion is really on the technical services side of it. So.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Like you said, Gopher, from a long time ago. And I think about when I went in undergrad, there was internet, but we were doing paper journals. And then I went back to grad school 10 years later and I was like, wait, I have to look online. Like things are in PDF. And just like this long trajectory of how much things have changed. And what must it be like, I think, for people who are starting library school now who have never had to look through paper journals or indexes or anyway.
Yeah, so different.
Linda, how about you?
I would say that it all began with a love for academia. That seems a little old-fashioned right now, but I was a theater major as an undergraduate, and I was determined to become a theater professor. And I took some time off after my bachelor's degree, but I eventually also went to the University of Texas at Austin. I think we might have been there at the same time.
I think we overlapped, but we never met. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, we never met. I was in a PhD program for theater history and criticism. And I pretty much made it almost all the way through the PhD program when I looked around and realized that there weren't that many jobs for theater historians. There's like one at every university. And I didn't want to live where I didn't want to live. I didn't want to go to the one job that was available that year when I was looking.
Wow.
And I met my future spouse, who happened to be an academic librarian at the time. And it was kind of like a light bulb went off. And I went, I love academia. I love learning. Librarianship, that sounds about right. I started out, when we moved to New York City, I started out working in a special library. It was a 10,000 volume arts education library. And then I went to library school. Right about the time I finished library school, I got laid off and they closed the library. So I found myself on the job market. And that's when I jumped into the academic market. Specifically. And I became involved in the professional organization that drew Susanne and I together originally. Since then, I've been in different positions in different colleges and universities, a couple in New York City, and now we've moved to Michigan in the past year to be closer to family, and that's what brought me to Michigan State University. My current position is Open Educational Resources Librarian. This is something that I had done when I was at Post Oast Community College, which is part of CUNY in New York City. And that credential is something that got me into a position where I wanted to be geographically. That was a key for me.
I was also a theater undergrad, and I remember our theater history professor was beloved by all of the theater students and had so much so that he was asked every year to speak at graduation. And the year that I graduated, he was like, no, somebody else can do it this year. But yeah, there was one. You both had stories about where do you want to live, the location influencing your career and your career path. Which is something I think when we think deliberately about our careers, we don't necessarily think. And also, it's going to depend on, like, do I want to live in the snow, or right? Or we might think about, qualities of where we want to live, but not that particularly in librarianship will affect the kind of librarianship you might be able to work at.
Yeah, I think that's something everyone should really think about a little bit more because, it's a cliche, but life is short and it happens quickly. And, you think you're only going to be in a position or a geographic area for a short time. Like, I'll just go for a year or 5. And it's so easy to just never leave because life happens around you. And you may whatever, get married or, stuff that makes it harder to be geographically mobile.
I never thought I would want to be back in Michigan again when I left. But, the family calls. And it was some kind of miracle that my husband and I both got academic library jobs not too far from family at the same time. So, we feel very, very lucky. We didn't plan it this way. And I won't say it fell into place like there wasn't any diligence behind it.
Right.
It took quite a bit of strategy and thinking and targeting particular job position openings, and it worked out. We're very lucky.
I think that's an excellent summary of the way luck might work in a job hunt. There is so much to do with luck as to what happens, but things don't necessarily fall in your lap without assistance. Should we talk a little bit about your book, How to Thrive as a Library Professional? I think that it's a nice sort of seed for talking about careers in more of a holistic way. What led the two of you to write it?
So we had been collaborating for a long time through this professional organization, ACRL New York. Susanne was heading up the mentoring program, and I was the co-chair of the New Librarians discussion group. And there's a general affinity between those two constituencies. So all of our programming we did together. I don't think we ever did anything individually, those two groups. So we had this history of collaboration, and it was also a collaboration around career development topics, around hiring and strategy and finding your way. And Susanne had already successfully completed a book project with another collaborator. You want to talk a little bit about that, Susanne?
Well, yeah. So that's kind of how the book idea came about. We weren't, like, oh, let's write a book. Even though, in hindsight, we had all this material after doing, for so many years doing these presentations and workshops, both locally, and I think we'd already started doing some national ones at that point. So I had written a previous book, which I co-authored with Tiffany Eatman Allen, called Career Q&A, a librarian's real-life practical guide to managing a successful career. And that was published in, I think, 2013. So I was approached by an editor, publisher, to do a new book, I guess, because I had one out there already. This is how things happen, right, people? So you do something, you're going to get asked to do more of the same. And I was like, well, maybe, like, I don't know. It's not really on my radar. And I don't know that I want to take something on all by myself because I like to, partner up with people. I like to have collaborators and people who hold me accountable. And I just didn't think I wanted to or could do it on my own. And I wasn't even really sure what I want, because they left it open. Like, what are your ideas on a new book? And I was like, well, I don't really have any right now. It wasn't on my radar. But then the more I thought about it, I just said, well, let me think about it and get back to you. And I did some thinking, and it just came to me like, well, why not, do this with Linda and just compile all of the stuff that we've done and really think about what it means kind of holistically as one's professional career. So not solely, geared towards new librarians, which a lot of our programming had been, but really for librarians at any stage of their careers, like what would be the most, have the most impact for the broadest group of people.
I think that broadening of the audience was one of the key things that drove the structure of the book as we created it. We became very interested in how telling stories is a big part of career development, not just the stories you tell when you're in an interview or when you're writing a cover letter, but there are stories that you tell about the work that you do with colleagues when you're learning from each other, for example. So we actually developed some personas of individuals in different segments of the library profession. And we told stories from the perspective of these fictionalized personas throughout the book. So we specifically wanted to include the perspectives from public libraries, special libraries, archives, as well as academic libraries. And I think it's one of the things that makes the book strongest. I don't know if you would agree with that, Susanne.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think it makes it maybe more interesting and more readable because you have these kind of more personalized stories about these personas that we've kind of created. And also we did a lot of research. It's not like a research heavy book by any means, but we wanted to look to other professions about these topics to really, to really broaden it out. So we looked at business and psychology and sociology and the health professions fields and took from, what was written and research for those constituents. And we used a lot of activities and exercises that we included, which we thought could be helpful and relatable to library professionals and information professionals.
It did really strike me. I was thinking back to my Foundations of Library course, the very first library course, and how boring the textbook was. And because you use these personas of 5 different people who are different kinds of library workers, to me, it was like this great opportunity to look at like what are the different kinds of work that we do as librarians, what are the different things that we might be looking for or thinking about when we have these careers, what are the things that it allows you to do each day. And so it struck me there that I was like, I wish that this had been my foundational library textbook, because I feel like I came in and I had never worked in a library before, and it would have given me this great overview of so many different aspects to thinking about when you have a library career. Every chapter is full of exercises. So I think that it would be a really useful book for people that people that are interested in reflective practice. That's your last chapter is on reflective practice. And actually that's the one that I want to dive into because it's relevant to some of the work that I'm doing in my consultant gig. And also people that journal. That's the other thing, that if you have a journaling practice and are interested in more journaling and exercise prompts, like there are so many, I think, useful self-discovery exercises in the book. You have this part in the introduction where you talk about self-help books and whether or not this is a self-help book. Would you elaborate a little bit on that?
We thought that was a very important thing to put in the book, and we wrote the intro. That was the final thing that we wrote. Which I think is also a very good idea as you reflect upon this product that you've just created. How do we want it to be introduced? I think we kind of wanted to be set apart, and we didn't want to be dictating like this is not, even though it can kind of read as like a self-help guide. And we just kind of wanted people to take it for what it is and chapter by chapter. And by no means are we, telling people how to do things or how to, go about their professional life. But here's what we've learned in our, our own experiences and the research that we found in all these other different areas out there in the professional world.
I feel like there's a lot of baggage around the term self-help. And, it was important for us to get eyes on the page because we do feel like there is a lot of value in the exercises that are in the book. And that's the feature that might get it pigeonholed into that self-help genre. But we wanted folks to connect and really engage in the work as something that could help them, could empower them in their career path and in their career planning and in becoming more deliberative and more reflective at the same time. We didn't want it to be dismissed, and I don't think there's any shame in saying that. I think that self-help books are maligned in a very particular way and discounted and therefore not paid attention to.
Yeah. Like here's a bunch of tools that are useful to you. And maybe Emily, maybe some library school professors are listening and they'll incorporate this into their syllabi.
There's this interesting, because it's written, so it was published in 2019, so that it was written probably 2017, 2018. And there's something to me that's a little prescient. It's one of those words I read more than I say. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
I think prescient? It's prescient.
Prescient. Thank you, professors. Precious. Anyway, words. There's something that so it's written in 2017, 2018, but there's something that in this introduction where you talk about, there's a little bit of permission that it's not like, this book is not just to help you be a big success. It's to help you be a little bit more well-rounded, and there's I think some acknowledgement of that the working to help yourself doesn't have to be to sort of make you a better cog in the machine. It can also make you a more rounded and whole person. Am I reading extra stuff into it, or?
Well, I think that's definitely at the heart of how we think about ourselves in the profession and how we think about the librarians we've worked with in various ways. I don't know that was necessarily in our minds at the time, but I think it's very perceptive observation.
I think the word satisfaction might be a little more important. I think when you talk about success, and I can see where people might read into that, like, oh, you want to make a lot of money, you want to become the highest level you can get to. And I think in our minds, and we've always felt that way, and we still do. I think that's not the goal. The goal is to be happy, to be engaged, to feel empowered, and to be satisfied in your own decisions, your own choices, your own, professional career and your growth, I guess.
And I think there is some, I don't know if it's explicit, there is some acknowledgement of burnout as a fact of life for library workers, which I think became much more clear in 2020 in the height of the pandemic and nowadays. Have your perspective changed on like, are there things that I'm going to say post-COVID, not that COVID is over, but post the advent of COVID, like, are there things that you would talk about differently?
Yeah, we discussed this a little bit before recording today. It's true, the book came out right on the cusp of that emergency situation. And I think one thing is that we've noticed a change in ourselves, and we've noticed changes in our colleagues, and self-compassion and self-care have really come to the forefront. I think that they are more important than ever to talk about. I think there's a little bit that leans in that direction in the book, but work is less important for people. And in some ways that's a necessary correction. Spoke about burnout, and that has been a problem in our profession for some time. So if we were stressed or burned out before, maybe we've learned some lessons having gone through that situation or still going through navigating COVID. We've learned some lessons about what's more important. I've noticed colleagues who are less involved, less ambitious. I've had colleagues who switched to become very clock in, clock out thinking, more driving toward disconnection. Folks considering early retirement. So I think that, I don't want to overgeneralize here, but there are a lot of people in our profession who are thinking about work differently, not necessarily library work, but thinking about work differently and thinking about the work-life balance a little bit differently, which I don't think is something we really touched on in the book.
Right. So maybe it's how can we be even more engaged now? Because I think it's a little trickier post COVID. And Linda and I were talking, we could probably write a whole new book, like organizational culture in many places has changed drastically or dramatically. I think we're all seeing that. And maybe, again, that was something that needed to happen because there wasn't, not that anyone could have planned for COVID, but the lack of like future planning and strategic planning. And we've seen so many institutions close down. We've seen so many colleagues, get laid off in recent years. And I think it's just, everything, not just libraries, but, our larger organizations are changing. And so that kind of has that kind of trickle down effect as well. It's a struggle, and it's such a good question of how to move forward and how do we address thriving? What does that mean?
Was thriving initially a term that you wanted to use, or did that come out through editing?
I can't even remember the title we proposed to them, but I know they didn't like it.
Yeah, they didn't like. Yeah, the thrive, I think, was a word that they
liked. Yeah.
They liked. So,
is there a word that you think would be? Is it more about satisfaction? Like, would that be a better word to capture what you're trying to get at?
Definitely satisfaction is an important part of it. If we're looking at it again, I mean, we might put in, I think engagement is such a, we say that all the time. So that might be included more upfront. I do remember one word that they didn't like, which we had, I think it was cultivating. Maybe it had been overused, but that kind of got to maybe more of what we were thinking of as in, you're growing your career, you're cultivating it. Yeah.
Well, I think, what it was? It was professional practice. You know how doctors talk about having, a doctor has a practice. They're in, family practice. A dentist has a practice. And we had started to think about what we do in our career as developing a practice. It's something we nurture. It's something we take ownership of. It's something we thrive within. I want to bring thrive back into it. And they really didn't want us talking about, I guess the word is it's not used in that sense much outside of the health professions.
Yeah.
But I do like to think about a career as something that can be built.
Yeah. In last season on the podcast, I talked to a woman, Snowden, and she talked about her career as a French braid. Like that she didn't set out to do something, but that there were these strands that she kept weaving in. And at the end, this was the shape of her career, which I thought was a really nice metaphor for both it being deliberate and also like chance, Do you have particular thoughts about the deliberateness, or how much shape can we shape when we shape our careers?
Well, I think deliberation, planning, strategizing has been key for myself. I think that it can be a very strong way to navigate a profession, but I think that is always paired with reflection. And we ended with reflective practice on purpose because reflection is the thing that takes in what was accidental, that notices what you weren't planning to do all along, and takes that into account as you determine what's next. So I think oscillating between deliberation and reflection can be very, very productive for an individual.
Right. And I think a lot of the other things that we talk about are, like collaboration and networking and putting yourself out there can lead to a lot of these maybe chance encounters and, opportunities that you may never have had you not done that. And also just keeping your eyes and your ears open and, you hear about a job opening or you see it somewhere, it comes across your desk. and you're not even looking for a job. These are things I think everyone can be doing and should be doing, because it might be something absolutely perfect. It might be that next step that you didn't even know you really wanted or needed, but something that's going to keep you engaged. Or it may not be a job, but maybe some kind of volunteer opportunity or committee work or something that's seems very interesting or exciting, and then that just leads you off into the next area.
It's definitely something I think about specifically for library students, is to go ahead and start looking the minute you get in library school, or even before, to start looking at job ads, just to see what is out there, and you get a better idea of, you know, steps that you could take to be more suitable for a role, or about roles that you never even thought of before.
And don't stop. Keep doing it. You've worked in the same place for 10 years.
Yeah. Oh,
15
absolutely.
years.
Yeah.
You're close to retirement. It doesn't matter. Like, keep looking, because you never know.
Yeah.
Don't stop, I guess. Don't become complacent in your own, you know, career growth.
That might dovetail us into, so you did co-author a chapter in a book called Combating Burnout, Positive/Transformational Leadership in Organizational Culture. It looks like that's in an edited book called Academic Librarian Burnout. Do you have additional tips for burnout, or is there more discussion we can hop into there?
Yeah, the work that we did around burnout for that chapter was about the leadership or the organizational perspective, as opposed to what can an individual do, because the empowerment is very different in those two situations. So we were really investigating positive leadership attributes and how those may have been in place in a burnout situation or absent in a burnout situation. So those were things like being an active, present, and engaged leader, as opposed to someone who's checked out. Modeling certain kinds of ethical behavior, modeling engagement as a leader, so that the people who are coming up under you understand what engagement might look like. It has to do with transparent or even collaborative decision making from the point of view of the organization or the leader, and encouraging everyone in the organization to contribute, so that there's sort of a shared vision of the purpose of the work that we do together. The ultimate goal is for everyone to feel engaged in that work and empowered to move the organization toward those goals. And then there have to be some conditions in place that can mitigate against some negative situations, right? Sometimes you might be in a culture that disincentivizes self-care or work-life balance, and that can contribute to burnout. No accountability when the leaders of the organization say they're going to do something and it just never happens. These are things that eat at people. You know, they wear people down in the workplace.
Yeah, and I think everyone has or will experience burnout to some degree at some point in their careers. We were focused on leadership styles and how, you know, positive and transformational leadership can help with burnout. But we also understand that that's, you know, in a lot of cases that doesn't exist. We think of burnout as the opposite of being engaged. Like, and when you're actively disengaged, then you're at kind of the lowest. You are really burned out. I've talked to people in the past who are in just kind of dire positions. It's easy to be like, oh, just leave. You're in such a bad place. You hate your job. It's horrible. It's, you know, dysfunctional. It's not healthy. And a lot of people, you know, a lot of times you can't do that. Like, it's your job. It's a salary. One of the big things is try to find, you know, a support group, or try to find collaborators you can talk to about it. I think delving into like informal leadership opportunities can give you some kind of empowerment if you're able to do that. And that could mean getting out of your own institution and volunteering to take on roles and you know, other committees or associations. So, you know, there's ideas that we have, and certainly strategies that we've also done in our own careers that have helped us cope. Not that we were totally burned out, but
well, you said everybody goes through at least some at some point, right?
Well, and I do think that finding that informal leadership opportunity is a strategy that I've used when I've been feeling that my organizational culture is not really supporting me in a particular way. If you can get permission to take on a project that you care about, even within the chaos of that less than ideal culture, that can give you something to help with that engagement and empowerment. It's not always a permanent fix. You may still want to be, as Susanne said, looking at the jobs, looking at the job boards, see what's up there. Because burnout can be, like we've talked about some pretty mild characteristics of burnout in an organization. But in a worst case scenario, there are times when there's actual harassment or malicious behavior where that has become normalized. So, the urgency to remove yourself from a toxic situation can really vary.
I talked to Katrina Davis Kendrick in my first season of the podcast, and she does a lot of work around low morale in libraries. And I think that's sort of where that extreme burnout or that when you're in a toxic situation. And she has a lot of tips for people, and it's almost, there are, I think, some parallels to leaving an abusive relationship, because you do get in a mindset and it becomes normal, like whatever the treatment that you have, and it's hard for you to see outside or to see your worth at all. Setting yourself up for a project outside of that, I think that's great advice, to set yourself up for a project outside of the place that it's hurting you, whether it's full on toxic hurting you or it's just like you're done. But that setting yourself up for a win is really wonderful for your spirit. One of the reasons why I left California was also burnout. And my other thing that I recommend people do is they start a podcast, because something that's really nice, I think, when you don't have passion for your field, is to talk to people who do, and to talk to people about their work. And I think a lot of my experience having conversations such as the conversation we're having right now just sort of helps me feel like that there are other real people out there who are doing interesting work and thinking about interesting things, and have had situations similar to what I have had. So that's my recommendation, is start a podcast.
or do presentations or writing projects.
Yes.
What are we going to do next? Like, it keeps us motivated, This is exciting. What are we excited about?
You said specifically collaboration, and you talked about, getting this opportunity to write a book and saying, I don't want to do it by myself. Who can I collaborate with? So,
and now we can't stop.
Right.
Uh-oh. This is the snowball, the collaboration snowball.
That's right.
Oh, hey, just a quick interruption to mention again, I'm running a 4-week online class for job searchers through ALA Core. It's free for members and not free for non-members. This is for LAS workers at all levels who are looking for more support and structure in their job search. If it's before August 4th, 2025, and you're interested, you can find the link to register at hiringlibrarians.com/classes. And now back to the podcast. So let's see. I think I want to switch gears a little bit, if that's okay. So a lot of people who listen to the podcast or read Hiring Librarians are either people who are looking for work or people who are hiring. So I want to maybe switch gears and ask if you have any specific advice for either of those two populations. Maybe let's start with talking about people that are looking for work. Any top level advice?
Oh, wow. I feel like we have so much advice.
Imagine that you have 20 seconds. What would you say in 20?
Whoa. Okay.
Or, okay, you could have 2 minutes.
We did jot down some notes.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, then you have more than 2 minutes. But yeah.
We needed to keep it short, and we were thinking top level. Yeah, some of the things we wrote down. So think about where you want to go, and then make career moves that help advance that. So, and this is, again, we're kind of reflective, but thinking, holistically overall, where am I coming from? Where do I see myself? And what do I need to do to get there? Other things we talked about already was building relationships and, putting yourself out there, doing the networking, meeting people, getting your name out there so people kind of know you.
one of the things that has worked for me when I've been on the job market, especially early in my career, was jumping into the professional association and volunteering for a committee.
Mm-hmm.
And that really gives you something to not only put on your resume, but something that you can talk about in your interview. In your interview, they're going to want you to tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's not a one-to-one match with what they're looking for, if you have some related experience, they want to hear a little narrative about that.
Mm-hmm.
So we suggest going out and getting some experience, whether that's in a library job, some other kind of a job, or some side work that you're doing with a committee or an association, whether it's library related or not.
Mm-hmm.
Be able to talk about your experiences as they relate to the desired qualifications in the job list.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also important to customize your CV or your resume, a letter for every job. I've been on hiring committees where it's clearly not been customized to the job that we had advertised. And, that just shows that you are truly interested and that you're able to understand what's desired. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to apply for jobs even if you think you don't have all the qualifications. I've actually seen some job ads state that now, which is interesting because it used to be in the past, like, don't even think about applying unless you have all these.
That is, I do think, specifically an equity consideration, because researchers have found that men are more likely to jump into applying for a job if they don't meet all of the qualifications, and women are not.
And this is really related to another point that we wanted to bring up for folks who do the hiring. I've had some experiences recently on the job market that I think may be future best practices. The first is I was looking at a couple of jobs that even before the application process, they advertised that they would do drop-in online information sessions open to anybody. So these were online and they gave general information about the job in an informal way, as opposed to the sort of formalized checklist that you get in the job description. And the attendees were also able to ask questions anonymously. And I think that is a really low stakes way to engage people who may be on the fence about whether or not they should even apply. And the second practice I wanted to mention was I applied for a job, and for the first round of interviews, which they do on Zoom, they do routinely with the camera off. So that's another equity consideration. You don't know what the other person looks like until after that first round of interviews. And then, of course, when they come for the in-person interview, you have more information about that. But I think it helps.
Have you ever seen symphony auditions when they do that practice? Sometimes they play behind a curtain.
Behind a curtain. Yeah, that's it.
It's like The Voice. I like it. Yeah.
Well, and then maybe that's a good segue to that. So advice for, those are two great things for people who hire. Any other advice for folks who hire?
If you work in an organization that is dedicated to helping everyone in the organization develop an engaged and empowered work life, whatever that might look like, this is not exactly, in the process of hiring, but if you are able to equip your organization with that kind of purpose and that kind of a culture, then that is going to be a major selling point. And it's also going to connect with people who are interested in being very engaged at work. When you look at your candidates, things you might want to value in your candidates are, that desire for engagement, a sense of ownership in the work that they do, self-confidence, self-determination, work-life balance, being able to take risks, being able to push back based on your own convictions. and to write your interview questions so that you can elicit stories about those kinds of things.
Along those same lines, I think the search committee, I've been in so many search committees over the years. And I think sometimes they're not always on the same page. And a lot of times, I mean, almost all the time, the job descriptions are something that's kind of forced on us. And we have to use this certain lingo, and we have to, cram it into this many words, and we have to get everything in there. And, which isn't always great for job descriptions, and certainly doesn't tell the whole tale of who they're really looking for. I think it's important and for search committees and people who are doing the hiring to really get together and talk amongst themselves about what type of individual they're really looking for. Like, who would be the ideal person? Who would be someone that might really fit in with the culture and the structure of the organization, of the various personalities that are already there? Because so much of it is kind of the unseen of the people that we're hiring, because we want to hire someone who's going to be a good fit, not necessarily the person with the most qualifications. There's so much more to people than that, and I think a lot of times certain people are looking for one type of person, and other people are looking for the other. It's somebody totally different. And I think if they can get kind of on the same page and really talk it through about, oh, you're right, we definitely need someone with this type of personality or this type of background with leadership who can really engage people, or we don't really need that. We need someone to be a project, focused on one particular project or one particular, do a little more, I guess, reflection of the whole committee or whoever's doing the hiring.
I was thinking about like what you had said initially about the idea of consideration and then reflection. And I do think my own work around hiring, I think more and more it is just important to be very clear and explicit about what you are looking for. And ideally that gets all the way through to the people that are applying, in the job ad. But I think in many cases, as you say, there are a number of things that have to go in the job ad that aren't necessarily helpful. But the more that you can be explicit with yourselves about the things that you're looking for and also transmit that, it makes it easier for everyone involved. It also gives you, I think, the chance to catch things which might be bias. If you've got a number of folks all talking about, what do we want in somebody, the person that we hire, you might then have a number of voices who can go like, oh, well, do they really need the degree? Or like, is this, you're saying this, but I know that excludes a person who might, this kind of person. So you can have those discussions up front and be very clear about it. And then I really love your emphasis on reflection. And I think that it can also be very important, like after you have your committee, if your committee has the chance to say after the hiring, how did it go? Who applied for our job? What could we have done differently that would have made more people feel welcome? What could we have done differently to make the things move more smoothly? Anything there. Yeah. We have been talking, I think, for about 50 minutes now. So I want to give you a chance to say, what have I missed out asking you? What were you really hoping that you could have a chance to talk about?
We got through quite a bit of the topics that we mostly collaborate on.
Good.
We've been doing some workshops recently that utilize a particular structure that we call knowledge share sessions. And it involves pairing people who are veterans on a topic or experience or skill with people who are new to that, and putting them in small groups and providing them with some prompts to engage so that the new people are asking questions and following their own intuition into whatever the topic is, and that there's a lot of experience that's being shared by the veterans. So, I mean, aside from those workshops, I think that that's an interesting principle for folks to think about when they think about developing their own or other folks' skills and career development, because that pairing of veteran wisdom with newbie enthusiasm and questioning can be really valuable, I think, in some kinds of interactions that we haven't even thought of. Like we've been doing it in workshops, but I think that goes right along with mentoring. And, every organization that I've been involved with in the recent years has been developing or has been operating some kind of a mentoring program. So whether it's formal or informal, librarians love to give back.
Yes, yeah.
There's lots of librarians who have a lot of experience who want to share that knowledge. And it's important for people who are new to the profession to have some courage and ask. Ask for a connection, ask for a cup of coffee, ask for a conversation, if it's not formally already a structure that you're working with.
I have always been amazed in my own work just how often people say yes to me. like I've had people, I run Hiring Librarians and I say, hey, you wrote this article. Would you write me a summary of it for the blog? And so many people are like, yep, I'd like to take on that extra work for you. Would you come on my podcast? Yes, I would love to talk about what I do. What about you, Susanne? Anything else that you want to bring in?
I can't emphasize enough how much my, relationship with Linda has helped my career and my sanity, I guess. And I think it's just so important to find those collaborators and those relationships out there wherever you can find them, whether or not you're doing, writing together or presenting together or podcasting together, but, having people write for your blog. It's, however you can find it. I think it's just so important, in our profession. We're a support profession, but I think we don't do enough to really support ourselves, going back to that self-care, self-love that, we don't really give ourselves enough of that and treat ourselves as well as we should. I think, we're very good with our patrons and other people, and we say yes all the time, getting back to maybe too much. But, I think just, finding those collaborators and those relationships that support us and nurture us.
And opportunities too. I mean, Susanne and I have rarely seen a call for proposals we didn't love.
I was like, we'll do that. Let's do that.
Put yourself out there. Let's submit to that. But they don't like us, let's submit it over here instead.
Exactly.
Oh, that's really lovely.
We don't give up. We've been rejected so many times, but we just keep going. We'll revise it slightly and submit it somewhere else or whatever. Just it's like we know we have a good topic, and a lot of times we have presented and done similar workshops for different organizations.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciated your time and your thoughts.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you for listening, and thank you to my guests, Susanne Markgren and Linda Miles. One last plug for my 4-week online class for job searchers. It starts August 4th, 2025, and you can find a link to register by going to hiringlibrarians.com/classes. If you'd like to support this podcast and my work on hiringlibrarians.com, you can find my PayPal by visiting the site, or you can go to patreon.com/hiringlibrarians. I'd also love to hear from you about any little thing at all. You can email me at hiringlibrarians@gmail.com. The theme tune was written and performed by Matthew Travers. Thanks, Matthew.